Hey guys, and welcome to Faewood. This is the next installment of my dark crystal necklace. The last one you saw me including all that black beadwork there for the Skeksis part of the necklace. And now I'm starting to piece together the design for the upper half of the necklace. You can see I've laid out different pieces there and glued them on. You might recognize some of them if you've watched that earring kit in a box video. I managed to find a home for some of the pieces that were in that because they had some of the same swirls and things that are in a lot of the mystics symbology. And if you remember from my design of my necklace, I was wanting to incorporate elements of both the Skeksis and the mystics into the necklace, the Skeksis being down the bottom and the mystics being up the top. So now first what I'm doing, I wanted to edge the triangle that I had put there with the Great Conjunction. I found these really nice square size 11 beads. I think they're like a gold luster topaz, and they just looked really nice. I still want to keep the colour quite, muted but stand out enough, so I found this colour to be enough to give a little bit of a border. And then I wanted to do another row of something else, so I ended up choosing a gold lined topaz size 15, and you can see I'm doing a row of that right next to those square beads there. And I'm going down as far as I can to the black beadwork, making sure that line stays straight. So as soon as I hit the black beadwork, I didn't want to go any further with that. I want this to still be very straight to really reinforce that triangle shape. I didn't want to then bend out and sort of bead around the black beadwork or anything like that. So after I did that row of the size 15s, I went back in with another row of the square beads. Now the reason being, what I wanted was a line of those beads around the triangle and then to use those same square beads as an edge to the rest of the necklace. Just something to tie everything together, because you'll notice that the top half, it is asymmetrical. So some of the elements, the dichroic glass, I did keep symmetrical, and some of the Celtic cross and other little swirl triangle things, I kept those symmetrical. But then after that, I put some dome shapes for basically the Observatory of Aughra, and I wanted those, of course, to be different sizes and not symmetrical at all, and then a couple of other elements that could be mechanical workings from that as well. So I found a couple of springs that I could use in there and attached all of those to the top. Now I did glue the really big brass dome down, but that is hollow underneath, so I was a little concerned about how strong it was. Even though I did use E6000 where I could, there wasn't a flat surface at the bottom of that to adhere to the lacy stiff stuff. So what I did was to make sure to use backstitch and then peyote stitch to encapsulate the cabochons. And that's what I'm doing right now, is just going up and around that shape, the dome shape, and capturing that into the beadwork with the peyote stitch. Now I've used a delica here, and I'll have to put the colour on the screen because I don't have the colour right with me now, but it is a really nice metallic with an iris sort of finish to it, and it just looked really nice with the rest of the beadwork. And I have the same bead in a size 15 delica, and the last row that I did of the beadwork I used the size 15. By using a smaller bead as you go up, it can help to hold the beadwork in on top of the cabochon more tightly. So, you know, otherwise it can be a little bit loose as you go up further. So the size 15 just helps, it to be really nice and tight. Now these other sort of hold domes that I've got on here, basically they're designed to put beadwork on top of, but I didn't want to do that. So that's what all the holes are for, so that you can sort of bead and sew into those holes and do all sorts of interesting things, or you could use findings, you know, whatever you can think of. And originally I got them for that purpose, but I thought they'd make perfect additions as some planets for the observatory. So I added those in, and again use the same peyote stitch around them to hold them in place. You can see I'm continuing on with that size 11 square bead just to finish off the edge work. And I'm going on to the other side now. Same thing, the same size 11 square bead, or I think it may be also referred to as a 1.5 millimeter. And again, I'm using the exact same delicas for all of my planets. You can see that I've now put some foiling on top of the domes there. I didn't show that for this part, but I will be showing it in a further part of the necklace. But basically I use what's called gold size, which is an adhesive that's just sort of tacky. You paint it on, you wait a few minutes, and then you use a dry brush, it's important that it's dry, to press the leaf onto the tacky gold size, and just keep sort of dabbing it in until it's all adhered and you know how you want it. And then if you need to go over it, you can wait for it to dry, add some more gold size, and you can do another layer of leaf. And you can see the leaf that I used has these beautiful blue variegations through it. And if you have a look at some of the footage of Aughra's observatory, it has some of those colours in it, you know, some of those reds and blues that you often see in metal when it's been heat treated and that sort of thing. And I wanted to show that in the necklace as well. You can see I used that same leaf over the holes on those pieces I was talking about before. I wasn't too concerned about all the holes being covered. I just wanted to have that same colour of leaf on those pieces. I did leave the really large brass piece because I just really liked the way that was shaded, because it had become sort of antiqued. So the domes and things in it, you know, had this nice shading, and I just didn't want to cover that up. And again, same thing for these little dichroic cabochons. I'm using the same size 11 and then size 15 delica. And I didn't want to go too high up on any of these domes or anything, because I really wanted the shape of the dome to be showing as much as possible. So I just did a few rows and tried to keep the number of rows fairly consistent for each of these. I think it was about 5 rows I did for each piece, 5 or 6 rows. The dichroic glass is actually all symmetrical. It's difficult to see that when you're looking at it because some of the elements at the top of the necklace are not symmetrical. But I was just trying to keep some elements uniform just to help balance it out, because if you go a little bit too all over the place and crazy and you don't have anything unifying the design, it can be a bit much. So I always do try to keep that in mind. My style is very organic, and so it is usually very asymmetrical, but I do always try and keep something that really unifies the piece. And sometimes that's more successful than other times, but hopefully this one turns out well. Now I had these lovely little Swarovski pearls, 4mm ones. I actually showed them in a haul on my channel a while back, and I thought they were just really nice because they were nice and dark and had just a touch of contrast, a touch of that purple that's already in the necklace without being too, like, standing out too much. I really didn't want anything to overtake, and was really careful not to have anything there that was too bright. I purposely didn't want any of the bright pink or purple crystals that were around Aughra, because I want that part to really stand out on its own, and if I started using those crystals elsewhere, it would really just take away from that. So again, I'm using those same 4mm pearls, and I like to use an anchoring stitch, as you can see I'm doing there, and going through them a second time, at least a second time, because otherwise I found often when you do a stop stitch it can end up a bit loose, because if you're relying on one stitch and then it becomes even the slightest bit loose, that one bead will become very loose and not sit nice and taut. So it does pay to have a couple of stitches to really hold each stop stitch in place, and it really pays for that stitch to be anchored very close to where you're sewing through the stiff stuff. So what I mean is, if you've been sewing somewhere else in the piece and you're doing quite a large step across the beadwork to put a crystal in, because it just happens to be quite a ways away on the piece, then it's just a lot of possible slack that can happen on that one long stitch. I hope that makes sense. You know, if you were stitching like a couple of inches from where you originated, you know, there's just more chance for that stitch to become loose, is what I mean. And so like if I do that, I either tie off and stitch across and tie off again, or do as I just said. Alright, well that's it for this part, guys. I hope you enjoyed this series so far. Please hit subscribe if you want to see more of my necklace as it goes along. And I'll see you next time in Faewood. Bye guys.